Collins & Co.'s not-for-profit conference, Be Empowered Through Knowledge, is designed specifically for the not-for-profit sector. Our speakers are experts in this sector, and their practical approach provides not-for-profit board members and management with the opportunity to improve their skills and knowledge across a range of specialist topics. The conference also provides a great networking opportunity.
I would now like to welcome Matt Fitzgerald. Matt Fitzgerald is a leading expert on the use of digital in the not-for-profit space and has a long history of leading innovative projects that create social impact. As co-founder of the Disruptive Business Network, Director of Connected Communities Melbourne, account strategist for SquareWeave digital agency, and now as a digital social impact consultant, Matt is heavily involved in the community. Matt will talk today on the smart impact through smart digital. Please join me in welcoming Matt, please.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks everyone for coming today. Thanks everyone for finishing lunch and coming into the room. I know it's a bit hard to get moving after a full stomach, but here we are, and yeah, I'm really pleased to be here. Interesting thing, I was working with SquareWeave when I first agreed to do this presentation. I've since taken up a role at the Department of Health and Human Services, rolling out tech projects there. The good news for you there is that I won't be shamelessly plugging the company I work for. So hopefully that means we've got a nice, easy presentation to listen to. What I want to talk about first is impact. And impact is obviously the reason we're all here. Every single person in this room is trying to create a positive change in the world somehow. Now, my experience with impact and looking at people who want to make impact is that those who do it well really, really understand the impact they want to make. They understand it's not just enthusiasm that we want to do things better. They're very, very clear on what doesn't exist out there in the world or what can be done specifically better. And it is this kind of strategic underpinning that makes it possible to use digital tools really, really, really well. So in terms of presentations about digital, there tend to be two kinds. The first kind is digital is amazing and it can do everything and it's cheap and easy and it's free and it's wonderful and you should just go and do it, and if you just get a Facebook page you'll have lots of customers and things. That's one kind. The other kind is that says digital is really, 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 really difficult and you better get my help to get it done. So this presentation will be somewhere in the middle because digital is not easy, but it is accessible. When it's put together in a smart way to create smart impact, the results can be really, really good. But I've seen a lot of examples of digital projects being launched and put together and overfunded and being really, really misused. So what I really want to get out of this, what I want you to get out of this presentation is how to think a bit differently about digital tools, how to understand the breadth of things that digital tools entails, because it's a very, very big world, and how to tie that in to the specific impact you want to make. So when you get specific, you start to learn what digital tools are available to you. When you go the other way and you come across a tool and try and jam it into the impact you want to have, that's when things go really, really wrong. So moving forward, I should say a bit more about myself too before I go too long and start to say you should listen to every word I'm on. So the last couple of years, I feel like I've spoken to every major not-for-profit organization and a lot of the smaller ones as well, especially humanitarian aid, spoken to all the major ones, examined their strategies, what they're rolling out, everything from communications to big tech infrastructure projects. Beyond that, I'm a director for Connected Communities Melbourne, which is a new philanthropic arm of Bendigo Bank, funding not-for-profit projects anywhere between 10 and 50,000. We'll be doing grants fairly soon, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, before that, and this is where I love talking about impact, before that I worked a lot with social enterprises. So Yeah, this pulls out some really stark differences here. So the not-for-profit world, the thing that really, really frustrates me, that now that I've stepped outside it, it's like for the last month or so and just reflecting on it, is it's far too often defined by what can't be done and what it isn't, instead of what it is. And so with that comes a lot of discussions around, hey, we could do this. No, we can't because. We can't because of budget. We can't because we're too stretched as it is. We can't because. And all those comments are valid, but it really speaks to the risk profile that exists in the not-for-profit space. We want change, but we're kind of averse to the risks required to make more change than we're currently making. Whereas social enterprises, especially the bootstrapped tech ones, the people running those sort of companies, they see every obstacle as a challenge, and they almost go far too far the other side. We don't have funding? Well, let's go get funding because this idea is too good to not run with. And so there's obviously some sort of balance between the two that has to happen. But when compiling and going through the examples of really good digital that create social impact, it really concerns me that there aren't all that many examples of very, very clever digital from the not-for-profit space. A lot of them come from social enterprise world, where people just kind of say, hey, we're going to try something, see if it works. And if it works, we'll expand on that. Which brings me to another interesting observation with not-for-profits, especially larger ones, which is true as much in not-for-profits as universities and government institutions. But surprisingly, digital is not always a benefit. It can actually be a barrier. So there are instances, and I won't name names because it's not fair for me to comment on restrictions and internal machinations of previous clients, but there are times where we would suggest something very, very simple. Let's just put up a page and see what happens. Let's get some traffic. Let's pay for some Google AdWords and see what happens. And the answer would be no. Our website doesn't allow for new page creation. Our system is too old to extract the data to run that campaign properly. And this is what happens when overcommitment occurs in digital. Either an upfront overcommitment, putting far too high a percentage of a budget or spend on a project that is untested or untried, or when commitment to an existing piece of infrastructure extends for too long because it's too hard to change it because we've had it for so long and it's so entrenched in how we operate. So that's when digital becomes a real barrier. So I highlight that because it's something we have to be aware of. And as a sector, it's something that takes a lot of effort to overcome and to redirect around. You have to be a bit creative. But when it becomes an express route, when you actually tap into your audience properly, when you actually create a new channel, when you actually find new ways to service the people you want to service, that's when you get this express route effect where things just explode out. And you start to surprise yourself by just how many people you can service and how much effect you can have on the world with the same set of resources that you had before it was put in place. So that is the challenge, and that actually doesn't depend so much on the tool that you use. It's more about the thinking that comes before it. And that's why I keep referring to digital as smart digital and smart impact, because it's all about understanding that resource environment. They're not my notes. Here we are. So digital, which I've been splashing around as a sort of catch-all term, means a lot of things to a lot of different people. A lot of people think social media when you say digital, which is true. They think websites. Some people think email systems. Some think CRM. Some think IT servers and this sort of IT infrastructure view. The truth is that all of that sits under the umbrella of digital. And when I think of digital, I think of any point where a human interfaces with the technology of your organization. That interface is the digital layer. There are layers that sit below that, but that's the bit that I talk about when I'm talking about digital and making it better. The users of your system, not just the people who provide funding, not just the people who use your services and the users of the website, but also the administrators. How easy is it to use those things? So that's the whole digital realm. And when you look at digital and what you use it for, it's really not that many different things. There are a lot of different tools. There are thousands of people saying you should do this and you should do it that way and you should do it that way, but your context is unique. Until someone actually listens to what your situation is, they shouldn't be telling you to do anything. So if you're going to embark on a thing, please don't just jump to something because someone else is doing it and they said you should. Make sure they've understood you before you jump down it. So the things we use digital for, and the obvious one is communications. We use it to communicate, to broadcast, to accept communication from people. The thing that bothers me about digital communications is that we're still treating it like 1950s advertising, where the audience is a passive recipient of the information, and we're here just throwing it out. And now, because we can amplify that message, we're going to throw it out even more. Communication is a two-way street. Find out ways to listen to people with digital tools. That's where it gets fun and interesting. That's where you start to mold your digital footprint and approach in a way that just makes you step ahead and expand the impact in a more relevant way. Fundraising in the not-for-profit sector is a clear area for digital to be used. Still seeing statistics and reports generally that face-to-face fundraising is much more effective than digital for different reasons, but in terms of volume of funds raised, we're still seeing a lot more in face-to-face than digital, which to me says two things. It says that the online fundraising environment is very, very competitive because everyone's basically taking the same approach, but also that there's a lot of improvement that can be made. There's also a few little subtext there that maybe it's younger people that don't have the huge amounts of huge capacity to fund that are online. A few other different things, but that's another. Business as usual and administration tools. This is the hidden layer of digital that really changes the effectiveness of your organization. The biggest projects I've worked on in digital have been back-end systems, reporting systems, and finding out ways to improve financial reporting and all of those sort of things. It's a really interesting layer to work on because, well, firstly, it's all your administration costs go towards it, but it's that freeing up of organizational tie-in that is a really good thing to do. Another thing we use digital for is research, and we don't use it enough for research. There are a few, especially health-oriented organizations, that are starting to really, really embrace it properly. They're learning a lot about the world, about the people who suffer from the ailment that they're trying to address, just by monitoring online activity, by creating a space online for people to share ideas, thoughts, to see and learn when people log on and what questions they're asking. This is all information that gets lost in analog channels, but is really, really neat when you start to use analog and digital hand in hand to sort of get this rich understanding. And of course, the final way we use digital is in program delivery. So this is, the obvious example is education. I mean, we use video-based education. This is being recorded and broadcast now through digital layers. These are the 5 areas. So yeah, there are a million ways to address each of these things through digital tools, but it's really not that many different things. So to do smart digital, you start to look at which of those things are you most limited in. Which is going to be the biggest boost to your organization to get it right, to leapfrog, to make that sort of step change from where you are. Now that's where your thinking should be. So when Rick first asked me to do this presentation, I thought, great, I'm going to line up a bunch of really bad digital projects and we're all going to sit together and laugh at them because it's funny when people get things wrong. But then I thought that that's exactly the thing that's wrong at the moment, that the not-for-profit sector is so risk-averse that I'd be doing a massive disservice if I got up here and laughed at a bunch of people for trying something new. So I'm not going to do that, except for this one. So this Oh, there is a logo on that. I tried to de-identify it, but I know that the person who was CEO at the time and the marketing manager, we've spoken and laughed about this, but this is one of the major humanitarian aid organizations that in 2011, when everyone was thinking an app is a good thing to have, they went and made an app. There are a whole lot of little game development agencies that were learning how to use iOS and Android tools to develop games. And so some of those would approach charities and say, look, we're trying to build our portfolio, your funds are tight, let's work out how to do this. This particular organization wasn't strapped for funds and put a lot of money into this, and it makes me cry a little bit. But what really offends me about this is that this is a game where you try and stop these cute little people from dying. Like, they've actually gamified starvation and poverty, which I think is really actually quite offensive. And this is what happens when you see the tool first instead of what your strategy is. This is an organization that wants to help people and build awareness and help people get a sense of what's going on and what the organization's pressures are and why they need your funds. But instead, they kind of took the edge off how serious it was. It's pretty lucky that not that many people downloaded this or got addicted to this game, even though that was one of the project aims. I'd also warn about, with getting involved in any of these sort of game-oriented things, is that the skill and capability of agencies that develop these sort of games is so high that the general public have a low tolerance of anything that is not at sort of Angry Birds level or one of these kind of games. So if your graphics are 10% worse, if your gameplay is 10% worse, it gets discarded really, really quickly. There is far too much opportunity and choice for the consumer there to say, hey, nice work there, not for profit. I really like your game so much, I'm not going to play any of my other ones. But the Australian Red Cross, and I like this example because they saw the bright shiny thing, hey, let's get an app because lots of people have an app, but they stay true to what they do. And what they do is use storytelling as a way to increase awareness and raise the seriousness and the reality of the people that they are helping to the people that are providing the funds. So this is a little storytelling adventure in sub-Saharan Africa, where you select a character and they put you in the world. They present you with a series of choose-your-own-adventure questions. And the first one is, your village is under attack, your house is on fire, you have 90 seconds to collect some things from your house, what do you select? After 10 seconds, they say, too bad, you've only picked one thing, you have to really run, out you go. And so you've got this kind of panic sensation already. Then every time a question is presented to you, you have to pick an answer and it takes you down a certain path. I've tried every single combination in this game. There is not a single happy ending. And I think that is the most well put together thing, because what it did is I got into the world, I got into the gameplay, and at the end of it I thought, these guys have it so bad, so bad. Questions like, the rebels are attacking. Do you select your brother or your sister to go with you? You can only take one. And these are the decisions that these people are making every single day. And that's a really harrowing, good storytelling delivery model here. And so that's using a digital tool really, really well. Sorry, this slide looks a bit stock photo-y, but innovation. Innovation is something that's getting spoken about a lot. The hype around innovation is starting to make my ears bleed a bit. It's driving me a bit crazy because people are treating it like it's something completely ephemeral and unattainable. Innovation, especially in the not-for-profit sector, is two things. It's about finding which problems to solve, firstly, prioritizing them and working out which ones to attack. And secondly, finding solutions to those problems. That's all it is. That's all it is. So don't get too caught up in innovation as a thing, but innovation as a process. Now, there's something that's really important. And sometimes it is, and often it is, really, really good to get external advice, someone to talk through the sort of strategic position of the organisation and say, we're thinking of doing this. What do you think? What's your worldview? Can we reflect on this? Because it's really, really easy for a not-for-profit, especially one that's in survival mode and kind of dealing with the day-to-day pressures and, God, we've only got 6 months of funding left and we've got to find something. That's a really difficult space to be in if you're trying to be creative. So I would really, really recommend reaching out to an agency if you're kind of in that space. Just let's have a discussion about where we are and what direction we could go to. You don't necessarily have to have the answers before you seek external help. Let's go for some examples now. So this one was really, really had some interesting videos. So this is Cupid's Undie Run. So you've seen these kind of campaigns before. We've got them here. We've got Movember as one where you grow a mustache for November. The MND Ice Bucket Challenge where people are throwing buckets on their head. So this is good. But this one, this worked really, really well in the US. They ran it 27 cities in the US and in Australia. It didn't work in Australia. And again, this is the strategic basis that you apply digital to that is so important. In the US, Valentine's Day is huge. It's such a big deal. It's in the middle of winter as well. So running an event where people have to run down the street in their underwear to participate is quite a shocking, big, noticeable deal. Seeing a bunch of Australians run down the street in their underwear on Feb 14 is not a big deal. It doesn't matter. So this is where, and funnily enough, Movember hasn't really taken off in the US compared to how it is here. It's doing much better in Canada than in the US, pro rata of population. So this campaign here, this website, it's a good website, and it's got all the functionality you would expect for one of these websites. So donations and leaderboards and social media sharing and all of those things. This is probably a custom build. So it'd probably cost somewhere between, at the lowest, $70,000 and right up to $150,000 plus, depending on the back-end integrations and things. So it can be expensive to do this. For them, it's worth it because they're raising $3 million in a single day. For others who run campaigns at different scales and different timeframes, some compromises have to be made. And there's a lot of much more cost-effective, but much less customized options available. So again, sometimes it helps to be guided down this path. I wouldn't recommend everyone going ahead and doing a custom build for $150,000 if that's an enormous budget or if that's your entire digital budget, especially if you don't have a track record. If you've been running a campaign for a couple of years and there's more interest in it than you would expect, then maybe it is time to invest and push out. And you just have to de-risk digital, and digital is such a great way to learn about the world in incremental steps that you don't have to jump straight in the deep end and run down the street in your undies. You can actually tiptoe up to that line. This one, that's not cool.com. The site is actually really cool. So this is, does anyone here work with a not-for-profit that works with teenagers or youth? Great. You'll know that they're incredibly difficult to talk to. And sociologists have really spoken a lot about how language that teenagers use is designed in an emergent, not intentional sense to keep adults out. The way teenagers talk to each other, the weird lingo they use and handshakes and stuff, and God, I'm sounding old now. I used to be a teenager. But this is a website that actually hits that mark. This website really, really shows what it takes to customize a communication effort. This site is really, really well received. The traffic it gets is enormous. The feedback it gets is great. It gets hit all the time. The way they actually present the ideas of digital abuse and control and the nuances around that on this site is excellent. And the whole site has a look and feel that is really, really similar to teen fashion. Those sort of websites. It really speaks the language in the written word, in the design, and the style, and the photography, and everything. Now, if you're running a religious not-for-profit that is trying to appeal to 40 to 50-year-olds, don't make your site look like this. It's going to be too expensive and it won't work. It really, really won't work. So again, so we don't talk about marketing so much in not-for-profit because marketing is considered a commercial term, but the benefit of the term marketing is that it emphasizes the market. It emphasizes understanding what's out there. And when you understand what's out there really, really well, that's when you do the best work. Sorry, I'll move this along because, yes, we're running a little behind time. I Had Cancer. This is a really amazing website. This was a real trailblazer. It really set the way. I spoke about what is limiting your organization from doing more and having more. And one of the limitations is resources and staff. A lot of services are delivered one-to-one, person-to-person. So I Had Cancer was an effort to engage the community, to start having survivors and sufferers talk to each other and leverage support. And it just took off. US-based, expanded really, really quickly, has really matured and refined over the years, but this is a case where it was a rethink around, instead of us doing that with every single person, let's have our staff just being curators. Just watch out for medical advice and verifying that. To watch out for people who might be having a mental battle as well and refer them to somewhere. So their role was shifted, and the number of people they helped increased significantly. This is just one of those great examples of smart digital. eHeadspace. eHeadspace is great, a very, very similar thing. There's a lot of barriers to teenagers and young adults seeking mental health support. And one of them is, especially for teenagers, is they need their parents to drive them places. So any sort of digital interaction is good for them. This, eHeadspace, is an online chat-based service. And when you look at the statistics of when it gets used, it really peaks at 10 p.m. at night. This is when teenagers are most alone and needing the most support. So Headspace is probably one of the most data-aware and oriented not-for-profits I've seen. They are really, really good at gathering data, assessing it, and using it to redefine their programs. So that was a really, really, really neat example of that. They could go a lot further. They could do video delivery and have one-on-one counseling through this, but it's that kind of triage system. The online chat system is not as rich as a face-to-face context. So you have to understand that digital will always diminish the richness of interaction, but if you spread and help a lot of people that wouldn't otherwise get help, it is well worth it. The challenge. Oh, this makes me so angry. So this is why I really, really push everyone to be smart and ruthless in a way, because this is the other side. This is the commercial arm. This is Sportsbet. I know, and I've met the head of innovation there. He is wickedly smart. He is really, really clever and really driven, and he has one number he has to drive. And so this is where knowing what impact you want to have on the world, because they know what impact they want to have on the world. They want to take as much money out of it, and they're selling hope and probability, and there's an endless supply of that. So what are we selling? What are we trying to engage with people? This digital tool here, which makes me really, really mad, they've got an algorithm that sits behind the gambling data. They know exactly when an occasional gambler is going to turn into a frequent, possibly problem gambler, and the marketing that happens in response to that, well, you can imagine what that is. Right? That's what we're up against as a sector. That's what we're trying to fight. They've done it so well, so effectively for so long, they now have political clout, and Spencer Street Station is covered in gambling advertising. This is why we have to be so smart. We can't just say we want the world to be better. We have to be impatient with it and work really hard and really effectively with what we've got. Because these guys are sprinting ahead, and it's not just them, it's alcohol companies and everyone else. Ask Izzy, am I going for time? This is a neat little tool for people seeking housing, people who are on the brink of homelessness. The reason I highlight this one, it's an information app. We're all giving information to people. The challenge is filtering that information. We can give an endless amount to anyone. So what Ask Izzy does, it's a really neat little, asks 5 questions: name, date, age, gender, and what you're seeking, whether it's housing or support or mental health. And just based on that very, very quick questionnaire, it gives you a list of relevant services. It's that quick. And so now they're gathering all this data. They have an awareness. They can see which suburbs are getting are seeing the shifts and the sudden urgencies and where resources need to be deployed. And that's really, really neat, because that's what the big tech companies do. They gather as much data on us as possible, and they find out as much as they can, and when they know as much as they can about us, they redirect us. So let's see the not-for-profit sector do that, and do a lot more of it. This is my last slide, and I'll go through it really quickly, even though it's the most fun one here. This is the next level. This is the big dreaming. This is what the really smart, clever ones are doing. Who knows what Shazam is? Shazam is an app that doesn't solve any real-world problem. It helps you listen to a radio and tell you what song it is. Now, this app that's pictured here is called ResAid. ResAid is something that listens to your breathing. You breathe into your phone. It records what that sounds like and tells you if you have asthma or fluid on the lungs or whatever it is. That is remarkable. That's the next level. That's using all the tools that exist within your phone, and there are a lot of them. Virtual reality in aged care is a really, really fun one. It flips the problem on its head. It's hard to get the elderly and the disabled out and about. So even though it's a diminished experience, it's a better experience than just sitting in the home. So virtual reality, with its increased sophistication, is taking us to a new level. And there's a lot of fun with that. The last example I'll give, because this is where I'm starting to really play and have a lot more fun, is the Alcohol and Drug Foundation are now looking at open source data. So data available for everything from the weather to traffic, to infrastructure changes, to population density shifts. And they're looking at that in conjunction with reported incidents of alcohol and drug abuse and reported incidents. So they're going from, okay, these things correlate. When this happens, here are the adverse outcomes. They're now starting to use it, and they're looking at ways to use that information to predict which areas and suburbs will need their help before it happens. So that's the next level. That's what happens when you catch enough data and you're doing good things with digital. So I'll leave it there. I've had fun talking to all this. I can answer any questions you have, or no, I'm off. Oh, okay. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Yes, yes.
Just go back to the Red Cross app that you mentioned.
Yes.
Is it kid-friendly?
Good question. It's confronting, but it's very well put together. Okay, I'd go through it first. I've got young kids, and I wouldn't throw it in front of them without going through it again first.
Cool. I mean, they did some other great stuff like the questionnaire and things they had a while ago, which, was interactive as well.
Yeah.
And I'm gathering I can just find that on the Red Cross site somewhere, or is it an app?
It's an app.
Okay, cool.
Found it through the App Store, yeah.
And the other quick question, the virtual reality you mentioned for elderly, is there a specific site or anything you can particularly look
There are
up?
a lot of companies putting it together at the moment. The virtual reality technology, Oculus Rift, were the company that launched and really took it to the next level.
What was it again, sorry?
Oculus Rift. But yeah, if you Google VR for aged care, there are probably 6 or 7 companies in Australia that offer varying degrees of service around it.
Thank you.
No problem.
What advice would you give to not-for-profits in seeking to determine what their digital, as broad as that term is, budget should be in terms of percentage of overall expenditure?
Yeah, that's an enormous question. And what a lot of organisations are struggling with is where to put digital in an org structure sense. So do we put it in part of marketing as a subunit of that? Is it part of IT? Does it sit at the executive or senior management level and amongst that? And I've seen different versions of all of them. I always try and take things up a layer of strategic importance. So that's why I was looking at communications, program delivery, business administration as separate spends and separate strategic components, rather than look at an overall and say it should be 23%, because, yeah.
Coming back to Red Cross, it's fascinating. Okay. And what sort of budget are we talking about to make something like that?
Oh, geez. Mobile app production is quite expensive. The rule of thumb used to be $80,000 to produce an iOS app, and another $80,000 to produce the same thing on Android. The technology's evolved a bit where the difference between a mobile app and a website is blurring, and you can actually produce an application that sits across both. There are trade-offs that happen with all of that, but yeah, I would be looking at $100,000 to do something properly.
So beyond reviewing in terms.
Yeah. Yes.
That's Australian speaking.
It is.
India has got some amazing app developers that are needing good connections in India to make sure you get the right product. But it's about a third of what we found. We were upgrading an entire technology app. We was going to spend $95,000, and we got our office in India to do some comparisons, and we found a $30,000 alternative, which was about 10 steps ahead.
Yeah, I think there was, like you said, a big rush for everyone to create an app and do an app. What's the data now about utilisation of apps, and do you see people coming to you asking for apps or websites or?
The most interesting data I saw in it is that 95% of app usage is limited to communication apps plus 3 others for people. So people don't actually use 20 or 30 or 40 different apps on their phone. They actually only use a handful on a daily basis. So the kind of novelty is worn off unless it's particularly useful, and you can just examine your own usage across the last week to discover this. So if you really, really want to help someone through an app, you have to be present and available at the point of needing it. There was a university we were speaking to last year that was looking at engaging with their students across employability and helping them with that. Students said to us they will not use the app unless it helps them deal with exam stress or subject selection or finding their way around uni, despite all the aims of it. So it's that real pinpoint, do you solve my problem or not?
Transport and social media.
Yeah. So some of the health-oriented organisations, so I think Breast Cancer Network, Heart Foundation, Scope Australia, a lot of these where people are using medication and needing to record on a daily basis because they lose track. That's a really good use of it. Yeah, it is. It is. And other things, people going through mental health that might need to check in or need reminders about certain things, but yeah. All right, thanks Rick, no problem. Thanks everyone, appreciate it.